Okay, it looks like we're holding steady at 1:30. Oh, 1:31. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is our first National ACT virtual meetup in 2026. Welcome to you all. Before we get started today, we just wanted to kind of do some quick review of the agenda and just how these calls typically go, especially for those of you where this might be your first time. We'll do some brief intros, and then we have a special topic for you all today, focusing on collaborative engagement within ACT, and we'll feature a panel of ACT team members in various states. So can't wait for us to have a chance to hear from them. We thought we would go ahead and focus on a panel this time again because we got such positive feedback during our last one in December when we had a panel talking about what folks were doing during the holidays with the people you're serving. Then we'll shift over to some open mic time. This is where it's your opportunity to share more about what's going on with you, ask questions, really foster more kind of sharing and information exchange among the teams. And then just a reminder that we do these every other month. So our next one is on Monday, April 6th, same time, same place. So just a quick overview on where everything is right now in terms of information regarding our slides and recordings and all of that. Right now, we've still got them hosted on the Spirit Center's website. And so you'll want to use that link at the top there, and you'll see that there's a place under resources for assertive community treatment. And then the third folder there is National ACT Consultation Call Presentations. And you can open that folder and you'll see a bunch of different presentations in the past, including previous ones that we've done. This is actually kind of an outdated list here. It's much longer than that right now. We're going to be talking a little bit about and referring back to this one right here, being too assertive or not assertive enough. This is a past presentation that Lorna and Christine Powers did. That I think provides a nice context for today. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then just kind of a reminder to you all that the Healthy Knowledge course, the ACT e-primer that had been on there is no longer, unfortunately, free because the funding for that has ended. I think you can still get on Healthy Knowledge, but you'd have to pay a fee to be able to do that. And then we're working on a new version of that that will be available in the next couple of months, hopefully in March. So stay tuned for that. We'll make sure that you all get all of that information when it's ready. Just quick housekeeping. Everyone's muted. Videos are off right now. We're recording and we will be sharing the slides very soon after today. And then again, when we get to the open mic time, we often have people unmute, and if they want to be on video, they can at that time. If you're going to use the chat, really use that for making like comments or again, for introductions, that kind of thing. But if you want to have an answer to a question, please put that in the Q&A box, okay? That's really where we can track questions and that those questions have been answered. It's hard to do that in the chat, especially when there's a lot of commentary because it gets lost in the thread. And we love to have comments. So, don't get us wrong. We love participation, active participation from the group. So please, please, please do that. When we get to the open mic time, we will say too, if you want to put your question out there verbally, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. And you can also be on video if you'd like, or you can also keep your camera off. But that'll just kind of pull you into the webinar a bit so that, people can at least hear your voice and that kind of thing. So again, we love that. So quick introductions. I'm Maria Monroe DeVita, and I'm the co-director of the Spirit Center at the University of Washington. I provide training and consultation for our ACT teams here in Washington State, as well as ACT teams nationally, and am the co-author of the Team ACT Fidelity Scale. And I'll turn it to Lorna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorna Moser. So I'm the director of the Institute for Best Practices here at UNC and have been a close colleague with Maria for quite some time now, and pretty much can say ditto to most of what she just said. Have my own great team here, and we do a lot of work in support of our North Carolina teams and also a lot of neighboring states as well.
And so with that, I think we're going to shift right into our topic for today. And Lorna's going to share her slides from her computer.
I am.
You are.
Let me get that set up. All right. So we are revisiting this topic again because it's a really important one. And based on the feedback from our last meeting, it's nice to hear from other providers to get their examples as well. So I'm kind of going to frame things up a little bit. So make sure everything is showing up okay, right? Okay. So we're assertive community treatment teams. This word assertive means something. Ultimately, the defining feature of ACT is this persistence around not giving up and really trying to help serve people who really would benefit from this care. That this level of care, sometimes referred to as the least restrictive alternative, is intended to help them not have worse things happen and set them up for success. And the folks that we're serving through ACT, they may be reluctant to receive care, and they may have various reasons why they're reluctant to receive care. And that's kind of a key piece of this idea of the various reasons why people are reluctant to receive care. When we dig into that and try to understand the reasons, and while assessing risk along the way, because those two things are going together. It's the engagement strategies, understanding the reluctance while assessing risk. That then allows us to better understand how to engage them, because the reason for the reluctance can also be tied to the strategy for how we go about engaging. As Maria brought up, we have a longer talk on this topic that Christina and I did 2 years ago, actually. And the link is here for you to go look at. This, we went in a bit deeper to talk about the full range of engagement strategies. Whereas today we're going to speak more specifically to the collaborative motivational strategies, because that's where we really want to be. We want to exhaust those as much as possible. And a key thing that we're looking for through doing engagement strategies is we're trying to retain people in services, because if we can't keep them in ACT, given that they actually really need ACT services, we can't help them with things like moving into and keeping an apartment, getting and keeping a job, girlfriend, cat, recreational hobbies, addressing legal charges. So you don't want them dropping out prematurely, because we're built to do a lot, and we're trying to help them around a lot of areas of their life. Now, I know we've shared data in the past from the study, and yes, we know we talk about the study a lot, and we really are working right now to get some publications out, but just turning back to this data point that is relevant to this talk of engagement. So I'm showing you from the National ACT study, extreme group comparison of lower fidelity teams compared to higher fidelity teams, and how they were doing around keeping people in the service. And so what you're going to see is the percent of people who were discharged from their caseload the previous year under these circumstances. So the first one is, what percent of people were discharged because the team was not able to locate them? For lower fidelity teams, 2.8% of the caseload was discharged because they couldn't find them. Compared to high fidelity teams, that's drastically lower, about a third, 1.1%. For lower fidelity teams, they discharged folks because of incarceration. 2.5% of the caseload was discharged, compared to high fidelity teams was 1.5%. Discharging because they moved them into a more restrictive setting, so like an ALF, a nursing home, something like that. 3.2% for those lower fidelity teams compared to 2.1% for the higher fidelity teams. Discharging because the person refused treatment and was demanding discharge happened for nearly 5% for the low fidelity teams, compared to half of that for the high fidelity teams. And the final one, it was looking at death. What percent died? It was 2.5% for the lower fidelity teams compared to 1.6% for the higher fidelity teams. So in the context of this, we're trying to retain people in services to meet these variety of needs. And we know that higher fidelity teams are just more skillful around these strategies. So that's what we want to be highlighting today, is a lot of these different strategies you all are using and what has worked for you. Now, we're going to focus on the collaborative motivational interventions. This is an item from the TEAM Act. So the TEAM Act has an item called assertive engagement mechanisms. The primary things we're looking at is what are the tools you have in your toolbox when it comes to the collaborative motivational interventions. But we also care about when those don't work and the risk is not going away, what are you then able to do? So we do look at the team's ability to use different types of what's called therapeutic limit setting interventions. So you're basically finding levers to press to get the person to participate more, because that service participation typically can help them with better symptom management, behavior management, and so forth. And with all of this, with this item, we're not just looking at the range of techniques being used. We want to see that there's evidence of thoughtfulness of how these techniques get applied. You're monitoring when somebody needs engagement strategies. You're monitoring for when what you're trying isn't working, and you're going to change that up. So backing up, what is the goal of using these engagement strategies? I've met teams that would be quick to say, well, I have to see them because I got to meet my billing requirements. They got their counter on the, on the dry erase board or Excel spreadsheet, making sure they're hitting their enough visits to be able to pull down the full billing. I've met teams that would say, well, it's to get them to take their medications, right? That's not ideal. That's not really what we're doing this for. You may get pressure. You may have a culture that's saying it, but ultimately what we're trying to do is we're using engagement strategies because we're trying to reduce risks that are coming to this person. And we know that by history, bad things have happened to them when they're not participating in care. We also are trying to help them set themselves up on a path of recovery. We know that with better symptom management, with more supports, they are more likely to have those things we talked about earlier: the girlfriend, cat, job, keep their home. So to that end, we're trying to create value in the services we're offering them. We're trying to keep the focus on what is most important to them and be really creative on how we're trying to engage them. Find out the things they care about and focus on them. Pay attention to the things they don't want and quit trying to offer those things. Don't take for granted the importance of small gestures. We talked in December about all the things you all do during the holidays, and there were so many great examples, but the small gestures really mattered, and you all had really nice examples of those small gestures. Also, be aware of how they've experienced services in the past. A lot of them come to ACT with what I call a life resume of being crapped on in a system, and they're expecting the same from you. So we have to show them we're going to be different. And really, when it comes to engagement for some folks, and I know some of the examples that were shared over the survey reflected this, that you're both literally and figuratively trying to get your foot in the door. This is a marathon process. It's not a sprint. You have time to try to keep chipping away and get more and more progress towards building that trusting relationship. So as you'll be hearing from everybody today, and hope to hear from you too, don't keep this in this kind of amorphous cloud of the team's head. Write down examples of engagement strategies. We're going to point you to a document that was been shared before that may be helpful, but write the list down. Creatively think of all the things that you've done before and tried, so that when you're feeling stuck with somebody, you have something to go back to and brainstorm around concretely. So here is, I think this has been shared in the chat already, right? Up in the beginning.
Actually, I shared it with you all when we were preparing, but I'm going to share it again, especially because we want it fresh.
So this can be modified. It's just a systematic way to be thinking about the situation and circumstances and what you're trying with engagement. The original authors of this, I believe, were our friends at Case Western EDP Center. And then I believe our friends with Christine and those with in New Hampshire had made some slight adaptations to it. So the credit should be there in the document. But using some tools, writing things down, creating lists. So now I'm going to turn this over to Maria to talk about some of the examples that we've heard.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen, kind of take it over from you, Lorna. Here we
Stop
go.
my screen. Right.
All right. You see that okay? Okay, great. All right. So, thank you for everyone who shared in our survey kind of different examples of how you've used collaborative or creative motivational engagement strategies. I think it's great to kind of just hear firsthand from different teams and, two of the same types of engagement strategies. I think there's a lot of nuance in those. And so it's really neat to kind of see two different examples of going out for coffee may actually use multiple strategies within them or have kind of nuanced aspects to, why they did what they did. So I think just hearing from you all kind of directly, and again, that's why we're doing the panel today. We're also going to encourage all of you to share some of your examples after we get through the panel as well. So couple things just to keep in mind. I snagged this from Christine's slide deck from the last time is just kind of what is the secret to recovery-oriented assertive engagement? I love this quote. People are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they have themselves discovered than by those which have come into the mind of others. So again, thinking of like being very person-centered in how we're engaging folks, especially when we don't have safety as a concern, when, we might be managing some risk, but it's not deemed as something that we need to worry about to the extent to kind of shift engagement strategies into something a little more directive. I love this too with the carrot being thrown out there. So with that, a couple of different types of examples. We just kind of categorize these in sort of specific kind of larger categories, but some of the specific examples. Just overall focusing on basic needs. So no strings attached, just focusing on what somebody needs. So we had many examples of like a food pantry in the office, having things like instant meals or cup of noodles, can openers to, be able to access what is available in the food pantry, clothing closet, donations of gloves, socks, sweatshirts, etc., hygiene products for folks. I know in the winter, there's been a big, and even in like North Carolina and Virginia and some of our southern states where you guys have also been hit and don't typically have a lot of snow, it's important, and people probably don't have a lot of access to warm, dry socks and winter gear. One person shared, we have a client living in a camper that is not well insulated, and we were experiencing a cold front. Again, this was in the South. They did not have a sound heating system, so we decided to rent them a room in a nearby motel until the temperature rose. Other example, dropping off Gatorade with a brief note to just, say, have a happy day, or just wanted you to know we're thinking of you, those kinds of things. Taking to the grocery store or convenience store or bodega if you live in New York or in the city. So again, just helping to kind of give people access to some of their basic needs and not really talking too much about services per se or medications per se, but just kind of using that as an opportunity to really help people kind of take care of, again, this is like Maslow's hierarchy that we're talking about here. Taking the time to just simply connect. So again, not talking about medications or therapy or services, but really just kind of spending some time with someone. Being curious about their experiences, what they're saying. They may share something about symptoms, and you may want to be curious and kind of learning more about that, which I think also kind of ties into what you can be doing later. Just showing humility and respect. Part of that's, showing up on time, honoring your promises, knowing that they keep track of these things, right? And if you're going to be late, being able to connect and make sure that people know that that's the case. Listening more than talking and taking time to get to know their interests and experiences, which then I think ties to some of these later engagement strategies that we'll be featuring. So this is a quote. This is all from one person. So I'm going to read it to you because I think it's beautiful and says a lot. So spending time and speaking with them about topics that they find important, not rushing sessions, sometimes sitting in silence if they are struggling and seem to need this. So again, thinking about, okay, do we need to be doing our scheduling a little differently to allow for more time instead of thinking about some of these brief, check-ins with folks. Some people may need more time, and that's okay. That's actually what, is it's important to do that. If they're sitting on the ground or in a non-traditional seating arrangement, sit in the same manner as long as they're comfortable with that. Getting to know them over long periods of time and attempting to support them through both good times and bad. Engagement usually comes naturally, provided that you attempt to have a genuine connection. So again, really connecting with somebody as a human being, not just as a provider of services. This example I also loved. Sometimes it's about taking a walk by the lake, which also increases overall wellness through exercise, community integration, etc., and having a conversation about life. When is the last time you have taken time for yourself? What do you like about the environment? Kind of asking those kinds of questions. Sometimes the best treatment strategy is just to be human. Those connections can lead to many more meaningful conversations about wellness, hopes, dreams, and what choices we make to help us along our unique path journey of recovery. And then some of those tie into these recommendations or strategies that folks use. So if you know more about a person, guess what? You can start to engage in doing something else with them or doing something they like to do as another strategy for engagement. So people give examples such as, just going to kick a soccer ball around or playing basketball. That used to be my favorite, playing it just a game of pig. So I didn't get winded and out of breath. I could actually still talk to the person. Somebody mentioned going on the tennis court, ping pong, that kind of thing. Walking and talking, have that being, the strategy, maybe in better times in terms of weather, but certainly just, having a chance to get out. And again, that can also sort of tie to other goals in terms of health and wellness. While going for a drive or on the way to an appointment, having those conversations. I love this one. Somebody said sitting outside. So they bought lightweight folding lawn chairs at Goodwill to keep in each of their company cars that they use to meet with clients, or getting coffee, tea, McDonald's, etc., any kind of tree that the person would like. Also, changing up the what, when, where, or who delivers services. Maybe it's having them kind of help to determine their own schedule, not imposing a schedule on them. Or if you know someone has challenges around kind of mornings. And I realize sometimes we have no way of changing this because of when our medication, management happens, often with morning doses, et cetera. But, could you do it in a little bit later in the morning for a couple of people or in the afternoon? So thinking of just different ways of trying to match that up with what's going to work for the person. Matching, team members with the person's interest. If, they like basketball or they like to watch the Seattle Seahawks, for example, maybe going, to talk about the Seahawks, or playing basketball with them. So it doesn't have to be someone who doesn't know anything about it, or the person could teach you, and you'd like to learn a little bit more about basketball. If they have similar backgrounds. We have a team more recently. We have a lot of Somalian refugees within some of our communities, and so we also have caregivers or providers that also have similar backgrounds. And so they've been able to kind of match up as well as, speak in the same language and culture and those kinds of things that I think are really key. Also, if they have kind of certain concerns, this is a person who has had a history of trauma, maybe this is, a female who really just doesn't want to meet with any males on the team. And so who on the team, can you have them meet up with a female or somebody who, can help help explore that and not feel threatened by that. Working with peer specialists, a lot of people talked about where that might feel less intrusive or less clinical in their approaches, and just, not making assumptions on where they would meet, but rather meeting at a location of the person's choice or on their own turf. Also, related to this, we had people give some great examples, like for our wellness group with the ACT nurse, she has them vote on the activity. And then it could be like walking in the mall, rec center, playing basketball, or even just walking around Walmart. And then they get to pick a treat, snack, or drink. Another, someone else talked about art group. So one client loved origami, so he taught the group over several weeks how to make different things. Another person talked about every time you attend a group for the month, they'll put the name into a drawing, and one lucky person gets a $5 gift card at the end of the month. The more times you come, the more chances to win. So, just some different examples there. I also just wanted to point out, some of you may be familiar with Pat Deegan. I know we've had her on some of these national ACT calls in the past. She is a person with lived experience and also an advocate, a peer advocate, and also is a psychologist, a clinical psychologist by training. And she has this recovery academy and library. It does require, purchasing. Our state has been really generous with our teams in Washington, where we, all of our ACT teams actually have access to just all of this information. There's just a treasure trove of lots of resources that can be shared. And again, really promoting kind of more of a recovery oriented way of being with folks. There's a whole section on just like medication empowerment and just how to kind of work with folks around medications that have in many ways very little to do with medications per se, but more as a way to better understand where the person's coming from and help kind of work, through that angle. So I really encourage you all to just take a look at that. We got the link there on the top. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to our panelists today. So we've got Brianne Rocha from New Mexico Solutions in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have Hillary Falk Vaughn from Physicians Alliance in Mental Health in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was going to say New Hampshire for some reason. Um, no, not New Hampshire. We have Simran Cutrofello from the Institute for Best Practices at the UNC School of Medicine, who works with Lorna. Excuse me. And then we have Jerry Hodge, who works with Horizon Behavioral Health in Lynchburg, Virginia. So, welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And so, I think we just want to hear from you. I'm going to let you all kind of take the lead here. Maybe we could start with, does anybody want to kind of get us started? Which are some of the things that you've been doing within your team, or you did within your team, or have seen within teams that you've worked with through training?
I can go first.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry.
So we do a lot of the things that have already been listed, but some of the things that really stick out in my mind is all of my staff, usually during the summertime, have those Frosties keychains where you can get a free Frosty with the purchase. And so they're often buying one Frosty for somebody, get another one free. Clients really appreciate that. So that was a little different. We do the Starbucks coffees too. Everybody has all those little apps on their phone so they can get points so they can share them with the clients. Another thing that we have done in the past that really seemed to work is if we can't engage with somebody, one example would be we had a client that came out of the hospital who was referred to us, and we weren't able to engage with that person. They came in, they met with us one time, and then they wouldn't open the door after that. So we continued to go on a regular basis and leave sticky note. This is what my sticky note therapy is what we called it. And leave sticky notes on the door, just saying, hey, came by to check on you, and just the person's name, the clinician's name, of course, not saying that we were ACT, not saying where we were from, but just doing that over and over and over again. And unfortunately, that person didn't connect with us then, and they ended up back in the hospital. But when they came out of the hospital that time, they had some needs that perhaps they didn't have before. For example, they didn't have a cell phone. Something had happened to their cell phone. And so then they came to us. and said, hey, can you help me? And it ended up being that it was like daily for a couple of months, that person walked to our office, used our phone to call his mother. Um, and from there, he was hooked in with us. And he has been with us for years after that. But it was really about being there no matter whether they are willing to let you at that moment. It may take 6 months, it may take 3 months. And that's something that we do routinely. We don't give up. So unless you are adamant that you're not going to allow us to come see you, you threaten to call the police on us, those sort of things, we'll keep showing up, even if it's just to say hi. Um, and also making sure that we always have unconditional positive regard for our clients, making sure that we have joy on our face when we see them, make sure that they know that we're really happy to see them. And even if they cuss us out the first couple of times, we still show up. And even if we feel, when it does get into that point where maybe I don't feel comfortable going alone, then maybe somebody else from the team would go. Maybe we'll go in partners. If we see them out on the street, we'll stop, say hi, offer them a bottle of water, things like that. I have more examples I could go on with, but I know there's others here, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jerry. That's
Mhm.
great. I'm going to circle back to you because we're going to also want to get a better sense of like if some of your teams have access to funding and that kind of thing. But hold off on that for a second. But I'm just thinking, okay, Starbucks, Frosties, that kind of thing. Where is the funding coming from for that? But we'll hold off for 1 second on it. Um, who wants to go next? Anybody want to jump right in? Hillary?
I can jump in. So I'd love to speak to one of the last things that Jerry said, and something that Lorna mentioned in the beginning was going out and people screaming and screaming at us. And a lot of times it can be for a lot of different reasons, but I think it speaks a lot to what Lorna was talking about, is about why are they avoiding us in the first place? And we love to take the approach of, if you need to yell, if you need to vent, if you need to say all these things that are in your mind that are disrupting your spirit, you can say them to us. And one of the ways that we try to connect with people is to let them know they can do all of that without going to the hospital and without going to jail. Because historically, that has not been always their experience. So we have had many folks over the years who would not really engage with us in any way other than to yell, and we were present for it. We were there for it and said, we accept you as you are. And that is one of the ways that we have found to be successful in those types of situations. But just to speak to some of the others, I want to try to focus on a couple more unique things because all of these examples are so great. But just some of the things that really stuck around with me when I talked to my teams about this is there were times when the incentive was really nice, but as soon as the client got the incentive, they were gone again. Like, oh, I got my cheeseburger, I'm out. I'll see you later. And so several team members will tag team and say, oh, well, actually, the psychiatrist wanted to see you today, and they were going to stop at McDonald's, but we got to hang out. They're going to be just a little bit. And so we would actually delay getting to them with the burger so that we could spend time with other team members. And it got to the point where we realized that if we showed up with a basketball, we could actually play basketball until the burger got there. Eventually, we'd get about 15, 20 minutes after the burger arrived with them, which was a huge success. So we would take that. We also, speaking to some of the things that you were talking about, Maria, with like peer supports and teaching and joining. We had a peer support specialist that I wanted to help a client mow their grass because they were getting fines from the city, but he did not want anybody to come, not even knock on his door. So she said, you know what, how about if I just help you mow your grass? So he taught her how to mow his grass the right way. And he would sit out there with his arms crossed. No, you didn't do that. You didn't do that. But ultimately, he actually let us in his door because he saw that we weren't there just to harass him with meds, that we wanted him to be okay. Um, I think the third one that I'll just throw out there that I think is hilarious is we had another person who, despite mom letting us in the door, would not speak to us until my teammate started playing Maury Povich on YouTube. And so they would sit there and watch Maury Povich on YouTube and try to guess like what was going to happen next, who was going to start the fight, who was going to come out and surprise with the parentage and all that kind of stuff. And then they got to the point where they could actually talk about other commercial breaks on YouTube. And that eventually, I think it took about 3 or 4 months, but we finally got to have conversations without Maury involved.
Love it. That's great. I love too the clarification on just kind of how did you handle if somebody, they would just go back to not coming in after they got the burger, those kinds of things. And just, it just tells you kind of there's a need to just kind of, really be nimble and think through kind of all different ways of doing this work. It's not just one size fits all or one strategy, right?
I love that Chad is adding. So Maury Povich is an intervention, Jerry Springer is one, and so is The Price is Right.
I'm sure we could add to that list too.
Uh-huh.
All right. Wonderful. Thanks, Hillary. Anybody want
I'll
to go
share a
next?
little bit.
Okay, thanks, Fran.
Yeah, no problem. I think all of the above, right, is stuff we've tried and done in the past. I think right now we have a client that really loves to go skateboarding. And so we take him to the skate park, right? And I had an intern go with him a couple weeks ago, and I think the intern hurt himself, but not too bad, right? But I think that was another place of like just engaging, right? It's something that they're interested in, right? And building that connection in that way with a new team member, right? An intern was new and trying and to make that connection. Most recently, our team, and this is something I was going to talk to Maria and Lorna about later, but we have started a contract with our second judicial courts with assertive outpatient treatment. And so and how AOT and ACT kind of can work together. And so we have about 7 clients right now. So they're doubly hard to engage. So we've had some different strategies. I think the persistence, right? And just continuously showing up that we're not gonna take no for an answer kind of thing, but right in a kind way. When we got a few of them, we always have like an annual Halloween party and an annual holiday party. And so I invited them to that, and 2 of them showed up and engaged and had food, right? So having that we have food, and I saw there was something, we have like a donation closet, right? That they can go and shop for whatever they need, clothing, hygiene, etc. So that kind of gets them in initially, but like, hey, we're not here to just talk about, your meds or these things, but look at these other ways that we can help you. I think that's a big piece of showing the newer clients that are hard to engage, or just if it goes up and down, is like, it doesn't have to be just this, like you're in therapy, right? This back and forth. We also cover some rural counties. And so we had a client who was a young male, and he was very hard to engage, lived very far south, like there's not really much out there. And we eventually got him to engage with us because we took him into town to a makeup store because he was really big on doing makeup. And then like he would send pictures to us of how he did his makeup and just engaging with him in that way. So really just finding those different, their interests, I think, is what's really helpful. And then, we had a client that would only engage with one staff person for a very long time, and that's not ideal, but at least she's engaging. So we would continue to do that. And then to incentivize getting her injection, we would, incentivize a coffee or a meal or something else, kind of combined with that. And then we have an art group. We have a team member who's very artistic and loves doing all kinds of things, but she really takes an interest from her group on like what to do next. So they've done all kinds of different things, but she really takes like she asks them for their input, which I think is really, really great and helpful with that. And then last thing I'll say is I think it's really great to have a team that's dynamic and different, because you can kind of pick and choose what staff to take to this client based on what you know about them to try to help them connect, right? And I think my team, we're really fortunate because we're serving such a large area. We have a pretty large team, but I have 3 staff members that are certified peer supports and care managers, case managers. So that really helps, being able to have the peer like experience to kind of share in that with getting some case management stuff done or making sure they don't lose their benefits, right? But they've connected with the peer on that level. So yeah, I think that's all I have to add.
Those are great, Brianne. Really great examples.
You all sound like you've only been doing this for like a year. Just kidding.
So
Um,
many, so many
yeah.
examples. Yeah, go
So
ahead,
I can,
Simran.
yeah, we have a lot of similar examples. I always found I bribed all my clients with food and coffee to meet with me. That really worked. And often going at different times of the day. So I remember my team members had a really time finding a client, but I always would go out like at 4:45 or 5, and the client was at home. It's like you're just going at the wrong time of the day. They're out wandering around doing whatever they need to do. They come back home and eat their dinner at 5. So you need to go at 5 o'clock. We were very lucky that our agency, we had our staff could get reimbursed. So if they bought clients coffee or lunch, we could put that on our reimbursement. The one thing I suggested was think of the most common places clients like to go, like McDonald's, Starbucks, and we can get gift cards for the staff to use. So instead of waiting for the reimbursement, because some staff are hesitant to use their own money, and I totally get that. So sometimes that's a barrier, right, in using the coffee and food part of it. So, having a company that allows you to get gift cards to these places is super helpful. I would say engaging the client or in what their interests are was really helpful. So I think I spent at least like 3 months just talking about music bands with a client that was literally like the human jukebox. He knew all the lyrics to all the songs. As an intern, I think I watched a client eat ice cream and we just sat in silence. And then after a month, she spoke with me and that was fine. But she would still meet me to get the ice cream. I've gone on a bike ride with a client that felt like I had a scene out of Stand By Me, and we ended up sitting on his trampoline at the end. So that was a good way to meet with him. I think it's really important to do behavior activations because sometimes we'll show up at clients' houses like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? They say no. So I suggested to staff, I said, don't ask. Just say, hey, put your shoes on. We're going to go for a walk. Hey, put your shoes on. We're going to go for coffee. And most of the time, I would say more than half the time, that worked. And I know staff feel kind of uncomfortable with that. You're being bossy or you're telling the client what to do. But our clients are very flat and they kind of need that spark to kind of get up and go. So my staff were like, Simran, that worked. I'm like, yeah, it's you're not giving them a choice to say yes or no. You're just telling them like, let's go. I had a staff member who had a client, she knew how to play the piano. So we had the client teach the staff member how to play the piano. That was very helpful. Staff members engage clients in basketball or sports, but really getting to know them. And I used to encourage staff, like, we can make this into kind of like a challenge. So when you go and build rapport with a client, come back with a new fact to tell the team about the client. So where did they grow up? What was their favorite food? What music did they like in? So I used to work in an inpatient psychiatric hospital, which was very boring. So I learned all my rapport building skills because I was bored there. So I played pool with the clients, table tennis, and that just really helped. And they would engage with me versus someone that just sat there and watched them, versus I can get my time passed very quickly if I just engage in some pool or table tennis with them. So I think like you can also help the team members that way. Like we don't know anything about this client, about where they grew up or what their favorite music is. So I think also giving that direction to a team member. The last thing I will say is if a client is in a hospital or in jail, that's a great way to build rapport with these really hard clients because they're kind of stuck. So again, I would bribe a client, I would bring him Subway sandwich every time I visited him at the hospital. And to this day, he still calls me and I haven't seen him in the last 5 years, but I still get multiple messages a month from him. But I always encourage team members, if you can, and if they're in the hospital for a little extended time, that's a great way to rebuild rapport, rebuild trust, and bring them whatever kind of snack that they like, because I think it's a guarantee that they will meet you once they're discharged from the hospital.
Yeah, I love those examples. And, the example of meeting with the person to just eat ice cream in silence for a full month, I think is really hitting the spirit of this, because I know you're using the word bribe, but you're not really bribing them. You're basically like, you're greasing the wheels for them to start kind of thinking, okay, this person named Simran is kind of okay. Okay, Simran, I'll kind of be willing to talk to you about these other things. And it's trying to find an in. And I think, for all of us, snacks and food is an in. But you're trying to use it as kind of like that brick that you're planning to build off of. And we just know that these are folks who often don't get these goodies to begin with. So it means a lot to them to get this kind of like their favorite bag of Cheetos or whatever it is we're bringing. But I love the ice cream example in particular, that it's a marathon. A month you're meeting and you're not talking much at all, but you finally start getting the foot in the door. Let's see what's going on here. Great examples, everyone.
Yeah, really good. Do you want to say something about AOT, Lorna?
Yeah, so I know, Brianne, you brought it up, and I know it was brought up in the question box too. So this administration seems to want to divert funds in directions that's going in the direction of compelling people into treatment. And AOT, assisted outpatient treatment, is something that's been around for a while. There's been some big studies of it. I think there may be even a new study in development or already being implemented in New York State again. And there has been a history of trying to get states to use some of their block grant funds towards AOT initiatives. So I think, I'm on the side of the debate that there is probably people who, if they're not compelled to treatment on an outpatient basis, may not get any treatment and bad things happen. So then you're kind of weighing the ethics of, is having them sit there and squander in an institution the recovery way of doing things, or do we try to work this out on an outpatient basis? There's very smart people who have argued against this, so I know it's a hot debate that will always be there. I think that the problem with AOT that I've seen implemented across the US is that it basically sometimes just kind of hijacks the ACT team as a model and just says you're going to serve people who are coming to your team under a commitment. So it's changing who you're serving under the pretense of under the civil court. And sometimes criminal court comes in here too if there's a mental health court in the area. What it misses is the key components that I thought was really smart with how New York State did this. And I know that we have New Yorkers here, is that AOT is about having an oversight committee, basically, who's making sure that not only is the client being held to the terms of what the outpatient commitment says, but it holds the provider to the terms of doing the things that they were supposed to do as part of this commitment. So it's basically supposed to be a contract oversight, so to speak, to make sure all parties are reasonably doing the things that was supposed to be done. And I think in some states, you hear about AOT being implemented, but it misses this feature of oversight, which is really critical. And that's the piece that, if it's done well, can at least make sure that we're staying within reason, that we don't have a provider who's missing out on offering all these recovery-oriented and rehabilitative services, and the person just keeps having their commitment renewed and renewed and renewed. So I think that's a piece that gets missed a lot when I hear about AOT implementation. The other piece too that I think is really critical is AOT teams, and I don't know, Brianne, if this is by design for your teams, they should be allowed to continue to serve the person on a voluntary basis. And that gets tricky with a capped caseload, because if you're doing great services, I always say with AOT teams, one of the biggest successes is that people want to continue to get your services voluntarily once the commitment's done. But if that starts showing a bigger proportion of your team, now you don't have as many involuntary commitment slots open, which then becomes an issue too. So yes, that's Lorna's 5 cents on that.
Yeah, I don't know, Brianne, if there was anything you wanted to also kind of say.
I'll share a little bit. So this is pretty new to us. We signed our contract and started service in October. So it's fairly new. Like I said, we have 7 clients, so we're still learning as we go. Years ago when I've been with ACT almost 8 years, and my first year or two, a county down south from us had an AOT connected with their ACT and was really successful, but I was really uh I wasn't super supportive of it. And I really didn't understand how you could mandate somebody into an ACT program, right? And so I didn't really look into it much. And then about a year ago, myself and my 2 team leads went to a symposium put on by the Treatment Advocacy Center, because our state just signed into law that AOT has to be offered in all of our counties. And so we sat in that the symposium, and I was like, well, why aren't they partnering with ACT, like in Bernalillo County, right? Where the county that we provide service in, because the contract in Bernalillo County had been around for quite some time, but had been bounced around from provider to provider for kind of what you're saying. Like there wasn't just a way to implement it. But I think the biggest thing is they weren't working with ACT teams, right? Because again, the criteria for AOT is almost identical to ACT, at least in the Bernalillo County contract that we have. And so there's a lot of challenges with it. I think there's clients that we have on our ACT team that have been on our team for many years who would fit criteria for AOT, but we have found ways to keep them engaged, in spite of the anosognosia, right? Which is like the big thing with them not believing the diagnosis, right? And not wanting to take medication for it. So I'm hopeful that we'll be successful in this, but I think you're right with like the oversight of it. And then we get to kind of decide what that looks like for us, right? Because we've been given some referrals that we've said no to because they need more of like a fact team because of the criminal history and all that, right? And so that's a little more concerning for ACT, who doesn't operate like a forensic team, to be able to do that in a safe way, right? And so we've said no to several because these people are not on probation, they're not paroled, nothing. It's just a civil commitment. And so there's not really a lot that they can do except this black robe effect, right? Which sometimes it does work, right? But oftentimes these people hate being on AOT. They're like, when is it going to be over? When can I be off of it? And out of the 7 we have right now, we have maybe 1 that will probably not have his continued and stay with us voluntarily. Now here in Albuquerque, there's essentially 2 other ACT teams. So between the 3 of us, we have, we carry different caseloads, but things are kind of moving a little bit. We actually might be starting a second team in a different location in the cities because of AOT's growth potential. Because several years ago at a different agency, they had about 35 clients within the AOT program. But we're having to do a lot of like outreach and community engagement because it hasn't been successful in the past in this county. So we're trying to kind of show like we're solid, like our team's really kind of a staple in the city, and we're trying to help them. And our agency too has been here a long time. So like we're not going anywhere, we've got this, but it's not without its challenges. I think also because the clients that are more hard to engage in the program in general are the ones that are actively using substances. And the court really doesn't have any oversight of mandating them to treatment for that or anything. It's just, we try to help them do that on their own, right? If they choose to. But, all of their court cases have been, they are deemed incompetent to stand trial. So then there's no other charges. And then they often, like the attorneys or the DA or anybody in the community can submit for an AOT request, right, for a referral. So yeah, we're fairly new to it. We're learning as we go, like I said, but there is a lot more paperwork on top of all the paperwork we already have to do, right, for the courts, and a lot more communication. So there's a lot more time spent, right, with doing this. So
one of the things when I hear about teams that are serving committed folks and they're kind of shaping as more of an AOT team by way of their working with the court system and so forth, well, the whatever the system is, the system for the civil side and sometimes going on the criminal side, is it's really the strategy, what I bet you're already doing is like, you're really communicating to the person, I hate that you're being compelled to receive this service. And I really want to work with you to get off of this. And we got to just keep communication about what are the expectations for that. And typically treatment orders are not written to such specificity that they have to be 100% taking medications, or they have to do this. There's always wiggle room of interpretation of that, and really giving the breadth of like, we're not going to try to get you or rescind this on small things. Like it really comes down to just safety and concern for you. But I think, you know, the research on this often is around this idea of like, you just have to keep coupling the unconditional regard, the humility, the compassion with all of it, and saying, I can totally understand why you'd be frustrated with this process. And we want to work with you to give as much control as you can have in this. So.
Yeah, and I think we've done that a lot, right? We have a couple that, you know, he works full time. So whether he does or not, that's what he's telling us. They're like, okay, well, then we can accommodate meeting you on your lunch hour once or twice a week, right? And then another one who leaves very early in the morning to go panhandle. Well, we've accommodated to send staff to him first thing in the morning, right? To try to check in on what they were needing. We're trying to be as least intrusive as possible, but while also still meeting the needs of the court, by adapting a little bit in that way. And it's taken a while, but this one, I just heard last week that the client that goes and panhandles, he's somebody who uses pretty frequently, that he's actually reducing his use. And I'd like to think that's because we keep showing up, right, consistently. But it's, you know, for 3-4 months now, we've been just kind of showing up. There's a lot more work with the families too that we've recognized, and sometimes the families are a hindrance to us, and to the process, but we're navigating all that too. So, but yeah, the team itself, like the petitioning attorney and the client's attorneys and the judge, definitely take a MI approach, right? Very positive, trying to be really, it's not very punitive, right? And like that kind of traditional court way. So I really appreciate that, right? That they've really kind of shifted their approach. And then the courts staff, they have like a case manager that also, you know, engages with the clients and is really positive. And so yeah, so that I agree with you, Lorna, that that's really important, and that like we don't want this to be their lifelong commitment, right? We want them to be able to see the benefits of taking medication or being on a team that can help them with X, Y, and Z, and then choose to do it on their own, hopefully. So.
Yep, that's great. We did have a question in the Q&A box about, so this is a team that has mostly females and only one male staff, and just thinking about some of the things that might come up. She mentioned unwanted touch that will sometimes come up, and thinking about all of these different, you know, interventions that we talked about, you know, it can feel a little vulnerable as a team member. Thoughts on how you all have kind of handled that in your teams?
I would actually love to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it came up in the discussions that I had with our teams
Mm-hmm.
earlier. Even the doctor on one of the teams said, you know, touch is something that is so critical to us as humans, and if we have those barriers without, if we have boundaries with no physical touch, it creates a barrier. He was like, but if we define it on the front end, he was like, I love that COVID created fist bumps and elbow touches and all that kind of stuff. And so he said, instead of us reacting to the inappropriate touch, putting those expectations out on the front end of initiating the touch, initiating the fist bump, and understanding where everybody is comfortable. Just because one team member will accept a side hug doesn't mean another one does, but making sure that we are on the front end being open about the fact that yes, we have intimate relationships with these clients, and understanding that might be there. Let's set it up for success on the front end instead of reacting on the back end whenever possible.
Great. Thank you, Hillary. That was great.
I love that. I love that. You know, recognizing that some of the folks we serve can be somebody who literally doesn't have positive touch with anybody for long extended periods of time. And we already know that ACT work is different. That's why I'm beginning these ethical quandaries, is because we have a level of intimacy that other providers don't have. Like I'm going to steal this from my Stacy. I don't know if she's here. Like, you know, if they're wearing boxers or briefs because you help them do laundry. Like it's just a different way of doing it. But at the same time too, and you all were saying this kind of like all your examples of like, I'm going to sit there and take it. If they got to scream for a while, I will take the screaming. But we also have to keep ourselves safe. So we also know that sometimes we think we're like so savvy that we lose sight of like, oh, maybe this touch has entered into a zone that actually is not good to, we're going on a slippery slope with this one. So I think it's great that, you know, having good team meetings with good sharing of information, good clinical supervision and leadership to constantly regroup around these topics, because otherwise I think our staff sometimes forget about safety for themselves too in these efforts. So
Yeah, it's a good kind of reminder for sure. Thanks, Hillary. Wanted to shift us a little bit into just getting a better sense of how are you able to do some of these things. So, you know, does your agency have funding, or your team? Or if not, you know, are there ways, like there were some examples in the survey about like taking donations or partnering with community agencies. So just curious, I'm just going to kind of put it out there, and whoever wants to share what you've been doing, I think could be helpful for other teams.
Yeah, like I mentioned, the agency I used to work for, we could get reimbursed if staff spent their own money, or we would have each team would have their own kind of credit card. So if it was a larger purchase, the team could use that credit card. Teams would often keep a lot of snacks at the office. So again, if we know this person like Coke, the team member could just grab that Coke and take it to that person. Some team members have gift cards to Walmart. So again, if it wasn't, I think when it comes to clothes, like me, I'm picky. So if they didn't want the donated stuff, they wanted something new, taking them, not being like, well, this is all I have. Like, all right, well, I can take you to Walmart. Like, Hillary creating that kind of boundary, like your spending limit is this much. That worked out pretty well. And like my suggestion to the teams was, what are the common places that we take them, and each team member getting like a $20 gift card to that place. So instead of the whole reimbursement thing, they could just use that gift card. So we were very fortunate that the agency had that kind of cash, or were trustful with us with the credit card, not to go wild and use it. For bigger purchases, I often, I said, social media, like you can ask on Nextdoor, like a lot of people donate stuff on there, like bed frames and stuff like that. So because some team members would go too far and be like, well, can we get the credit card to get this? I'm like, no, that's too much. Let's see what's out in the community first before we go to that. So there's a fine balance if you have that in managing team members' expectations of what's reasonable and what's not reasonable.
Yeah, I just want to second what Simran had to say, because my agency is very similar, where I have a credit card that I can use for expenses for ACT specifically. If it's over a certain amount, I have to get approval. But we have a budget for kind of client support items. We're lucky for our team in Albuquerque that we have a grant from our city that we get every year, so that we can provide service to people that are non-Medicaid, as well as using that for other funding for the clients. So we have a petty cash every month that's like, I think $250 that we manage, and then staff can get reimbursed as well. But yeah, we do the same. We try to buy food and drinks for groups to try to get clients to come to group. Like there's always food there, right, of some kind. Same thing with my art group. I buy supplies for that as she needs it. We have a client who's celebrating a birthday and she wants to teach everybody how to make balloon animals. So I bought a balloon animal kit on Amazon for them to use. So yeah, thankfully we're really blessed in that way, where our agency is able to manage that for us. I know that's not the case everywhere, but I think too, last Christmas we had one of my staff does a lot of jujitsu and it was at a gym, and they sponsored like an angel tree for our clients. And so that was really, really cool. And then we also, I think another staff of mine, her husband has a business, and they auctioned off, they did a raffle ticket for like a basket, and all the money went to gift cards for our clients. So I think trying to get creative, people in the community, staying connected, asking for donations, all that stuff is another great resource. It just takes a lot of time to do that stuff, but yeah.
I'd love to be able to throw out the idea. We're very fortunate at our agency that we also have credit cards and allowances for reimbursement and all of those incentive things in place. But what I do have experience with is really having to make the argument to our managed care organization that reimbursement rates could be higher or restructured to be able to support some of that. And the way that if like so, let's say you're working in an agency that does not necessarily jump on board with, yeah, here's your petty cash for your incentives for clients and that sort of thing, is with it's not fun to do. It doesn't feel good to do, but to really put the dollars to the request of, if I have this much money, it can increase my visits by this much, which ultimately ends up with greater outcomes and the ability to be able to hit those billing, because not all agency leaderships are the higher ups are a lot of them, well, some of them like to look at that bottom line before they look at the clinical outcomes. And so whether your leadership is on the, let's look at the increased clinical outcomes, or let's look at the financial bottom line, if you can say increased visits are going to improve both, that's a way to talk to your agency leadership about getting on board with some of that discretionary funding.
That's a good point. So to my earlier slide where I said, what's the goal? For our agency administration, it may be talking about the billing, but we know it's about good care and reducing risk. Good point. You got to know your audience.
Do you know, is for your programs that have separate funding for the team, is that unique to only ACT within your agency? Or do other programs have access?
I think our PSR program, I think, has additional support for funding for the stuff that they do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Same for you, Hillary.
Yeah, all of our programs.
Yeah. Okay. Jerry, has that not been something your team has had access to?
So we don't have access to as much money as I would like us to have.
Uh-huh.
Of course, I think that's probably true for all of us, but we do rely heavily on donations. And anytime we can get a grant, then we'll buy up a bunch of gift cards. We are able to get gift cards for all of our clients once a year for their birthdays. So we do a small one to, a fast food restaurant, and then we usually will ask them if they want it or if they want us to take them to go get that meal, whichever way they want it. But like with the Frosties, I talked about the Frosties keychain. So those are fairly inexpensive. And we as staff often buy gifts for each other, birthdays, things like that. And there's one staff member who buys those keychains for everybody on the team as their Christmas present to the staff on the team. So we really work together. And I was talking about how you can get all those, the Starbucks apps, all those reward things on your phone when you get the apps. And a lot of the staff use those to then purchase free things for the clients. So we do a lot of that. But our agency does kick in some, but we as staff unfortunately kick in a lot too. But I think my staff think of it often as if we weren't doing this, that we would make pretty sizable contributions to some other charities. So
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we want to shift into did you want to do a poll, Lorna? What do you think?
A lot of folks have been just naturally sharing through the chat their examples. So it may not be, we've covered so much ground with great examples. So
yeah,
I don't know if it's necessary or if we want to do an open mic period or what.
Yeah. Well, I think just opening it up to the rest of everyone who's on right now. I mean, feel free to kind of share some of the strategies you use in the chat or raise your hand. Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
put
had
that hand
some
up.
we had some late submissions in the survey that we weren't able to necessarily work in, but Susan in Minnesota, we really liked yours with connecting with your folk who was Native American and artists. That might be a nice one to hear about live.
Let's see, we've got a couple of people with their hands up. So okay. I'm going to go to, since you mentioned Susan, and then Orna, I'm going to go to you after, okay? And you might have to mute yourself or unmute yourself.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes, hi,
you.
Susan.
Hello. Yes, so one of our people is an amazing artist. Um, he can draw anything. He uses paint, he uses colored pencils, he does mirror etching. So a few years back, many moons ago, I worked at a casino on Lake Vermilion, and I knew all kinds of people. I still had the connections, so I got a hold of the person that ran the Heritage Center on the reservation, and then also the CEO. And they said, "Yeah, come on up. Bring him and bring his artwork, and we'll take a look at it and see." And they did purchase quite a few things from him, and so we're actually trying to get him not to go to the casino again, but to go to other places like we have these different art festivals in the summer, and so we're trying to get him to agree that we'll pay for the cost of the booth, and then he can put his stuff up. And so we're working on that again. Yeah, he's really amazing. We actually have one of his pieces up in our office. It's really cool. It's like it's a chief, like the side view of a chief, a Native American chief. And he has his hands out in front of him, and he has a turtle looking back at him. Anyways, it's really cool. He's very talented. Um, so yeah, that was one of our best stories.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that, connecting over something that's cultural, personal to them. You leverage warm networking that you had. I mean, there's a lot of things in there. Building his own kind of pride through this process too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not just
He
one strategy. There's
Yeah, yeah.
multiple strategies interwoven there. Yeah.
he was happy, very happy. So he's like currently he's not doing so well. So we're trying to work on that. His motivation and like, hey, you're so good at this. Come on.
Mhm.
So, buying him things like he clogged up his paint sprayer. So we bought tools to unclog it. And yeah, so
Yeah,
we try a lot of different things. And we're in a very rural area. So there really isn't a lot of options of different things, but I think,
yeah,
just listening to this today has been great because it's like, well, yeah, we've pretty much done it all and then some. So, yeah,
yeah.
like you said, you really have to be creative.
You do, and it's bringing your own talents. Hillary, you didn't share. I'll just briefly add a nurse who helped fix clients' breaks, and now she is the go-to person he wants to see.
You're right.
Sometimes you got to bring your practical skills into play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And knowing, yeah, it's going to take, it won't just be done when
Right.
successfully engage. I think to your point, Susan, it's like, well, he's not doing so well right now, but you've got this information from the past that was, really helpful to achieve that. And so you can go right back to that, but also maybe try something, different on top of that. So really appreciate you agreeing to talk since we weren't able to get your survey responses in on time for today. But
Yeah,
thank
sorry,
you.
I
No,
was
it was
way too
great.
much.
No, thank you. Thank you. We knew that
Yep,
we could at least reach out to you. So thanks so much.
you bet. Thank
Whoops, I think I may have cut her off a little bit there. I think our other person maybe put their hand down. Oh, there you are. Great. Let's see. Orna.
Oh, Orna. I've had email exchanges with Orna. I feel like I'm so connected to her because I'm Lorna. She's Orna.
Orna and Lorna. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay, there we go. Allow to talk. Might just have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say I don't hear my name often, so every time someone says Lorna, I'm like startled. Just so you know, I'm listening to this. Um, so I had a situation with a client who was on a mental health commitment and not interested at all in participating in the program and wouldn't talk to me. But I kind of found out somehow that he really liked classic rock. So we get together and just like I would play YouTube videos on my phone, and he wasn't tech savvy, so he got a real kick out of that. And that's all we did for like the first couple of visits. And then I was fortunate enough to get some donated funds, so I was able to get him like a used boombox and um, classic rock CDs because back then it was CDs, and it made him so happy. And there was like such a connection that after that he was much more willing to listen to me and talk to me about his meds, and we were able to get him on a much better medication that worked, and really it turned his life around in the long run. It was really yeah, it was really satisfying and yeah, fulfilling. So
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Orna. That was great. Appreciate you sharing that example.
Yeah, this is hard work. And we have days
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, what impact did I even have today? Or you're like, what impact did I even have all week? But these are the moments that reinvigorate us to say, this is why we do this work. Because when you can reach somebody that felt unreachable and you could see the bad places their life is likely going to go if we could not hook them into services, those are the stories that stay with us.
To the point that you even remember back when we used to have CDs, right? It's the story has clearly stayed with you.
so true.
So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's see, I'm gonna put you back here. Hold on one sec. Okay, bye. Let's see. I think we had a question in the Q&A.
I asked for more information because I wasn't fully understanding it unless you understand it.
Well, I guess one of my thoughts was so there was a question in the Q&A about reimbursement, whether so I it seemed to me like the question was maybe it can add up if you are doing this with multiple clients, even if you get reimbursed, that just kind of how do you handle that if you're, paying out of pocket and then getting reimbursed, but it's with multiple people. Has that come up at all for those of you that might get reimbursement for
Yeah,
things?
it it can add up. So that's why we would discuss like common snacks. So we would just buy them in bulk and keep them at the office. So if we knew the person like a Kit Kat or whatever snack they like, we would buy it in bulk and then we would take it from the office to their house to kind of get. But yeah, it can if the more clients you have and then the more times you're doing it, it can. And that's why it's always helpful if you do get reimbursed or um, telling staff they're not having to pay out of their own pocket because sometimes
Right.
that can be a barrier in itself where staff are like, I don't have enough
Yeah.
money to buy myself a snack. So yeah, yes, it can add up a lot. But if there's 10 people on the team that like this one particular snack, the cheaper option might be to buy it in bulk, keep it at the
That's a
office.
good idea. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great idea. We had a comment in the chat, Jessica from Idaho. A team I was on operated an office snack bar, and then
Yeah.
we would use the profits to fund things for our clients. So that's a really creative way to handle
Mhm.
that. Let's see, we've got a couple of comments and questions, so hold on one second. Okay, so let's see. So I think we had another question about reimbursements, which I think, again, I think we answered that one. Adina, let me get you up here. Sounds like you've got a comment. I'm gonna just, okay. And again, you might have to unmute yourself there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
So
can.
what I'm saying is, like, do you guys get reimbursed for yourself? Like, if I took some clients and we went to the movies or to the fair or to the tractor show or something like that, we pay for the clients. Our agency gives us money for that. But then I have staff members that are, I don't have money to go and get lunch or to go to the fair or anything. That's not in my budget. So do you guys have your team members fees and entrance fees and stuff like that? Do you guys reimburse them as well too? And also, because we're Medicaid funded, our agency now says, well, you can't go and get like donations, or even for like Christmas, we used to go and get donations. Like one year we went to Home Depot and we got toolboxes, and that's what we gave because like a lot of our people were getting their first apartments. So we got little toolboxes. And so now, because of new like Medicaid rules, we can't go and get donations of like toolboxes. So then it's like, okay, so it's staff buying things or things like that. How do you reimburse your team members so that they want to continue to do those activities as well? So that's it. I'm sorry.
We were cheeky and just put the receipt. We didn't designate this as client, this as staff. We just kind of, it was a very simple reimbursement sheet where you put in how much you spend and you just attach the receipt to it, and the team lead signed off on it. And then I would sign off on it. And that was it. So we got away with it that way. I don't know if your agency is more stringent and takes a deeper look at that stuff, but yeah, like I said, I think it's a big ask to ask our staff to pay out of pocket to do essentially their job, but then you get a lot of pushback. So, and like to Hillary's point, that was one argument I had to constantly make, which is you guys make more money if we can engage these really hard to engage clients. You can meet your billing expectation, but I'm not going to tell staff to pay out of their own pocket to do this. Like, you're going to have to pay some money towards this if you want to make money, kind of thing. I didn't know about the donation, about the Medicaid stuff, but yeah, it was there was a lot of trust, and I signed off on a lot of things. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of
it actually is. It is.
Like
Yeah,
what it
and
took for that particular event. This is how much it costs to be able to do this event.
right.
And so it's all inclusive, really, is what you're saying. Sorry,
Yeah, I
Brian, I
mean,
cut you
no,
off.
I was just gonna say that my agency is the same way, right? There's not a lot of like specific oversight of it, is we just submit the receipt. But I think something bigger like that, like a movie outing or something that is a little bit more, we don't do that often, right? Those are like special things we do. But yeah, like going for a coffee or grabbing a burger, things like that, that's always just covered for the staff as well.
That's good to know. Thank you. Because like we have a fair, and I might have staff that they want to go to the fair with so and so, and then like 2 days later, a different person wants to go. The next thing you know, I have a staff member going to the fair 5 days a week, and that gets pretty expensive too. So thank you. That's very helpful. It gives me a way to tackle situations. Thank you.
And thank you for asking and clarifying the question. That was super helpful. Sometimes it's hard to go back and forth in the Q&A, so it was easier to answer the question that way. So thanks, Adina.
Thank you.
I would love to add to that that we have a lot of those group outings like like the movies, we'll go to the aquarium down here, bowling. And a lot of our staff have been really successful in going ahead of time and asking whatever entity it is if they have any allowances or discounts. And we've actually gotten into bowling for free. We've gotten into the aquarium for like $2 a person instead of the $12 a person it normally is. And so if you're thinking about it from that cost effectiveness, it's also probably easier to reimburse for staff if you can get everybody in at those lower rates as well. They're good with it because we usually come on Tuesday mornings, and that's not really big high or like mid Wednesday afternoon to where they don't have a whole lot of happy to let folks come in for a discounted rate.
That's great, Hillary. That's so true. Like we don't know what discounts may be out there. It doesn't hurt to ask, and often, it can really be something we could kind of continue to do. And that's great. Thank you. I think we have one more person with their hand up. I want to make sure we get a chance to let her speak, and then I know we've only got 3 minutes here. So, Caroline, you had your hand up? You might have to unmute yourself. Maybe it was an accident. Caroline, can you hear us? Oh, there must be something with your audio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Caroline.
No.
It looks like you unmuted yourself, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it must be on your end just with the audio. Do you want to put it in the chat, maybe? At least to kind of share with the group? I'm sorry about that. We'll keep you on here in case you're able to figure it out with your audio, okay? All right. So we've just got a couple of minutes here. Any last thoughts? I did want to share a really cool comment in the chat. So Laura shares that it's funny that ping pong was mentioned. I used to play with a client and he wound up winning the ping pong tournament at our local college. This was especially exciting as he was one that left to his own devices would isolate at home. And it was free. So I love that. That's awesome. Kind of led to something else. So it's fantastic. Okay, Caroline, this may have been what you were going to share. So resources like the library and Promises Resource Network, they offer free classes such as yoga and the drum circle. Is that local?
It's in the Charlotte area, so it's a peer organization that has a lot of great things.
Okay, so for those of you in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, check that out. But there's probably something like that in other cities, I would imagine. So looking for something like that. That sounds great. Women's writing circles too.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let me quickly, I'm sorry. Caroline Murray, HM Health, I'm the team lead there, and we try to exhaust free resources before spending any money. Charlotte has wonderful resources like Promise Resource Network. Also, sometimes Alliance Behavioral Health, our local management entity, might share some resources that we pass down to clients. We also like to celebrate birthdays. And so, and it's on a voluntary basis, whoever would like to donate. And so usually the first Friday of the month, we celebrate birthdays. And my staff noticed that, okay, well, we didn't have anything in January. And I was like, well, no one chipped in. I mean, I can't be the only one paying all this money. Last time I treated, in the spirit of eating healthy, I had grapes and whipped cream, which a lot of people enjoyed, but it was quite expensive. And so now everyone kind of chips in each month, maybe 2, 3. Some people might chip in twice, not for that, but I would take it. And so, you know, as a team effort, we chip in monthly towards celebrating birthdays and you know, mailing HIPAA compliant cards. And so, but, you know, we try to exhaust free resources before asking staff anything.
Wow, thank you, Caroline. Those were great resources. we appreciate you still working on your audio there to try to figure it out. So thank you. I know we're a little over time. We've already lost a couple of our panelists. So thank you to Simran and Hillary, and we'll say our thank yous to our other two panelists. And thank you all for joining us. We're going to be together again in April 6th. Again, same time, same place. And we'll be posting the video and the slides for future reference we'll make sure we share that in the National ACT listserv too. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest of February. I can't believe it's already February. Take care. Bye-bye.